Are you satisfied with government's current measures to stem the spread of COVID-19? Currently, the numbers are 887. Yesterday, 57 Kenyans tested positive. The number of those who have succumbed currently stands at 50. This morning, we're looking at the issue of health and focusing on mitigation measures to stop or rather stem the spread of COVID-19. Joining me this morning is the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Health, Madam Susan Mochache. Good morning. Good morning, Madam PS. Okay, I think we're having a problem with our sound getting to our guest this morning. We're just asking you on our social media platforms to get tweeting. Go live. We're on KBC Channel 1 TV and live as well. We on KBC Channel 1 on YouTube. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara and the station's official handle is at KBC Channel 1 TV. Are you satisfied with the government's current interventions to stem the spread of COVID-19? So far, 50 have succumbed to the deadly pandemic whose cure is still unknown, while 887 Kenyans have tested positive. Are you confident that what is currently being done, including some measures that include curfew, as well as cessation of movement in hotspot counties, is concerned? SMS us 2154. On Twitter is at KBC Channel 1 TV. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara. Now, just to sample some few feedback that we've gotten from you on Facebook. That is, we have a comment there from Jean Kira. She says, I want to believe it's she because that's Jean. So we always are optimistic, but one feels needs more to be done at a time when floods keep wreaking havoc, taps running dry even as rains pound, jobs literally thrown out of the window. The novel COVID-19 situation is only compounded. The closing of borders is actually long overdue, but we are a resilient people. We shall be there post-COVID-19. Thank you very much, Jean. Follow suit if you want us to air some of your comments in regard to the current interventions that have been made by government regarding, or rather just to mitigate on the spread of COVID-19, whose cure still remains at large. Over 2-3 weeks ago, we had 7 or 6 of our scientists joining in this prevalent search for a cure of COVID-19 that has so far claimed several lives, hundreds of thousands lives globally. Countries like Eritrea joined the ranks with Mauritius that have already basically flattened that curve and have 0 infections. What can we learn from our regional partners, especially in Africa? Debate abound, especially after Sunday's comment there by President John Pombe Magufuli saying that lemon water can cure coronavirus, including other herbs that have been taken. That is quite controversial. We are now focusing on government interventions, and this morning I'm going to be having that particular conversation with the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Health, Madam Susan Mochache. Now over to you, PS. Good morning.
Namsikia sasa.
Very well, anasema nansikia. We can hear you right here on studio. We're coming to you live from KBC Channel 1. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. So we want to know, with the current infections we are seeing in double digits, what does this portend for Kenyans' bid to flatten the COVID-19 curve?
Thank you very much, Sheila. Yes, we have seen that the incidences of corona have been on the rise, and this really is a confirmation of what we have been saying, that the virus is not just amongst the people who have come out of the country, but that indeed the virus has now come into our community. So what it means is that more people out there are, getting infected and infecting others. And this is also something that, of course, we had hoped we would be able to tame fairly quickly. But for now, we can only say that we would want that Kenyans adhere to the guidelines that we have issued, because there is no other way with corona. It is about prevention. So now that we have hit the double-digit number, it only calls upon us to be a bit more serious, to be more vigilant. So Sheila, sometimes it concerns me to see how we are beginning to take things a bit lightly, and yet the numbers are on the rise. So we don't want to reach the 3-digit numbers. And if we are not careful, we may get there. When you walk and see people not wearing masks, not observing social distance, then of course that becomes very concerning. But if we all pulled together and ensured that we adhere to the very basics, washing our hands all the time, the spread of the disease will go down. And I think the minute it begins to go down, then we can begin to have confidence that we'll go back to our normal lives.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Now, the issue of government measures that have been put in place already, how effective have they been? How effective have been these measures that government has put in place? The curfew, the cessation of movement, especially in hotspot counties. We've seen currently around 19 counties have already have cases of COVID-19, and we're having these measures, particularly in those hotspots. Do you think they are effective enough, or they are effective enough to stem the spread of COVID-19? Or do we need more?
Oh, definitely, Regina. If it was not for the restrictions that the government put in place, if it was not for the real call for Kenyans to observe better hygiene, washing hands, if it was not for the fact that the counties that have got a high infection rate have been, cessation has been restricted within them, I can tell you we would not be where we are today. I think we need to laud ourselves as a country, because those interventions have meant a lot. Can you imagine if we were carrying on usual business like nothing is happening? We would be in the kind of crisis we are seeing some countries who are even far way developed than us, struggling to contain the virus. So there is no doubt in our minds that every measure the government has taken to contain, including contact tracing, because, Regina, when we say that people should not be moving in and out of counties with high infection rate, it doesn't mean that we just sit and wait. It means that there are rapid response teams who are moving within that county, trying to trace people who have been in contact with victims or people who have had corona. And so the time you see us on a restriction mode in a county, it means there's a lot of intensive work going on. And so really that has helped this country in a very big way. And the only disappointing bit is when Kenyans try to beat the system. We have seen people who have decided that they will use panya routes, say, out of Nairobi County. And then, the unfortunate thing is that they carry a virus into a county which did not have corona. So these measures need to be respected so that we do not see this spread continuing to the rest of the country, because we can deal with just a few counties. And so far, we are doing very well. Because when you see us doing the testings are done because of people who we have traced, people who we have identified to have been close to people who have had corona. And really, there is no better strategy to mitigate and to contain the spread of corona other than what the government is presently doing. But a lot, again, has to do with our own citizens. Mm-hmm. I think it is our desire as a Ministry of Health to see more people wearing masks. Okay. As simple as this intervention looks, Regina, it really goes a long way. So even any other economies that we are seeing out there that are trying to open up and allow people to undertake their usual activities, there's one thing that they are not letting go. People have to wear masks. So I really call on Kenyans to take it seriously. It's an important intervention because we must understand what is corona. Corona is a highly infectious disease that attacks the lungs. It really is transmitted through air. It is transmitted through us, getting the viruses on our hands and then, touching our eyes or our faces. And this is why it is important to wash hands and to wear masks.
Very
because
well
when
there.
you're within close proximity with somebody with corona and they happen to sneeze or they happen to just turn and talk to you in a distance of, let's say, less than 1.5 meters, you will get corona. So my prayer for Kenyans, so that we can quickly get back to our normal lives, let us wear masks. Because the day we see the numbers going down, and say for 2 weeks continuously, the numbers are decreasing, then obviously it means that we are winning the fight and now life can go back to normal. But it won't happen with the way some of us are not cooperating to do the things that are expected of us.
Now, Madam PS, there you've said that you are concerned about the complacency, especially among Kenyans, in adhering to the laid down guidelines. But now let me take you a step back on the issue of the rate of infections. There's this demographic, or rather this concern that has been raised by the Ministry of Health concerning the asymptomatic individuals. How are you dealing with this crop of, and which demographic do they fall in?
Looking at the data of the people who have had corona, what it shows us very clearly is that the majority of the people are around the mid-age groups. That is, people around 25 up to about 40. And yes, some of them will display asymptomatic symptoms. That means it may not be very obvious that they are carrying the virus. But the problem with this disease is that once it infects somebody with a comorbidity, which means that you have a pre-existing condition, even if you're 20 and, for example, you are going through chemotherapy, even if you're 20 and you have diabetes, even if you're just 5-year-old and you are suffering from a pre-existing condition, it means that corona is likely to really, take a toll on the body and bring you down. So while it is true we have a good number that are symptomatic, the fear and the risk for us is when the people whose immunity is compromised gets the infection. And as you know very well, Kenya has got a good number of people living with HIV and AIDS. We have got people who have diabetes. We have got people amongst us who are suffering from cancer. We have a good number of people who are over 50 years old. So it is these people that we really are working hard to ensure that they do not get the infection. Because when corona enters such a body, irrespective of the age, it is likely to cause a mortality or cause death. So just because it's asymptomatic does not mean that, we slow down or take lightly any guidelines that had got to do with social distancing or wearing masks. And even just overall, just avoid, if you're from Nairobi, stop going up country to visit your elderly parents. You're in Nairobi, stop going out there to places where corona is not there, because you'll go in feeling like you're well, but the minute you enter a family and find people with compromised immunity systems, you cause them to all go down. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing about corona. So we have observed that mostly people who are over 60, a good number are not able to recover, and they end up losing their lives once they are infected with corona.
Now, the issue of mass testing. The capacity remains low of testing capacity, because apparently we have the capacity to test around 37 daily, but currently the total numbers tested so far are 38,000 in total. what is curtailing the Ministry of Health from conducting, or rather it's scaling up its capacity in as far as testing is concerned?
I think, that's a useful question to ask. And Regina, the point is this. Nobody was ever prepared for corona. I mean, I don't think there was any country that had any time to get, everything in place to be able to deal with this pandemic. So, and unfortunately, a pandemic that has hit the entire world. So what does that mean? It means that it becomes difficult to access some of the things that we require, like testing kits, sample collection kits. If you recall, when corona just made its way into our country, even accessing the personal protective equipment was difficult. Getting those clothings for our health workers was a real challenge, and they were basically trickling in. And this is because the country that we have traditionally relied on, the few countries, are the ones that the whole world was looking at to get these, clothings and to even get the testing kits. So nobody really, I don't think, there is no country that can say that it is now fully self-sufficient in terms of testing kits. So it's a game of, placing orders from different places, and as they come in, you test with those and keep moving along. But we are happy to note that with time, there is more availability of these commodities. We are not where we are because, like, when we first placed our order on the Roche testing kits, we placed a very large order, but today we've not received the entire testing kits. So we get them as they are being produced and distributed to various countries. And so that is the situation that we have been dealing with, because as you know, the challenge has not been capacity. Kenya has the capacity to test over 30,000 tests in one day, because having HIV and AIDS, having had the scares of Ebola, we've been able to put in place a very robust diagnostic testing capacities. That means that we have labs all over the country. But where do you get the testing kit? That has been the challenge that we've been facing. But I am absolutely pleased to note that at least in the last 1 week, up to going into this week, we are having the largest number of testing kits that we have had in the country. The 20 laboratories, remember, we started with 4. Now we have reached 20 laboratories capable of doing tests. All of them, as we speak, have got sufficient testing kits. We are continuing to give them the collection kits. So our capability is also increasing as we move along. So we will see more people being tested because the market is looking up out there. And we are also getting organized financially to be responsive and to be able to buy much more than we could. Because again, Regina, remember, money was not sitting somewhere waiting for Corona. Corona came and money had to be looked for. And the government has done well so far, and we continue to be committed to ensure that we do everything that we possibly can to flatten the curve of Corona and really bring our country back to normalcy.
What is the current reception when the officers, frontline officers who are doing or conducting these tests go to these areas to do for testing? Has the reception improved?
What we have had to do, of course, it has things are changing. I think the fact that the government has come out very clearly to say that no one will pay for quarantine, because one of the things that made a lot of people shy away was because they knew that if they were tested or if they were picked up by the rapid response teams, it would mean they go to quarantine and that they would incur or bear the cost. So that really we found was very, very defeating for this war against the virus. And so the government now is shouldering the entire cost for quarantine, but that is in public facilities. However, for those that choose to go and stay in a hotel for quarantine, we allow them to go, but they go there at their own cost. So because of that pronouncement by government to shoulder that cost, A lot of Kenyans are now coming out. A lot of Kenyans now are not as afraid to be tested or to be contact traced. So I think that has caused us to have a better level of responsiveness within our people. And I think the fact that we've also been able to record, people who have passed on in their homes. You know that there was a case in Mombasa where 2 elderly people passed away at home. We had a case in Isli where somebody was also just passed away. And there was also another case I had on the other side of the country, western parts around Onyanza. And that tells you that, the disease is a reality. And when people see that, then there is some bit of sobriety that these realities bring. And people are cooperating. And I really want to thank the ones that are cooperating. Okay. And the other thing that we've had to do to see a better turnout is initially we used to, visit these homes at night when we want to pick up a person, because then you are assured the person is at home. But even that, the tact has changed. We are, doing contact tracing even during the day. And even the approach has changed. There is more better engagement with the person. So overall, we have seen better cooperation. But of course, there are certain places where there is a bit of resistance. And for me, is to urge that in those places, it's a call for all the people there, the leaders, to encourage their people to allow the teams that do the contact tracing to enter the community, to test people, and to take others to quarantine. It is all for the good of the community. It is all for the good of the country. And if this cooperation is maintained, I can assure you we will be out of corona sooner rather than later.
Now, courtesy of the Kenya National Union of Nurses has given a 20-day period to engage in dialogue with the government in regard to their demands, given that their strike was to commence today. Do you think the government will meet the demands of these frontline workers and ensure continuity of services at this time?
Already, Regina, the president has already set the tone. He has already pronounced himself that he has tasked us to look at a welfare benefit package, health insurance to ensure that our health workers are properly covered, to also ensure that we offer personal protective gear for those that are at the front line. And we have endeavored to do our best. Now, this, notice to go on strike, yes, has been received, but I'm happy that the Ministry of Labor has called for reconciliation. And I hope that the discussions will go well, because at a time such as this, really we have to be called to rise to the occasion of serving our country. We must also remember we are operating under very difficult and very constrained circumstances. When the economy is as low as it is, surely it means that the collections of our taxes are lower. At the same time, we have Kenyans who have lost their jobs. They are out there. They don't have food. Those people need to be fed. So really, mine is to urge that there will be understanding and there will be good cooperation with the nurses and the other health workers that are intending to go on strike, because I think that particularly where issues have nothing to do with COVID, I think my prayer and my humble request to the unions would be, let us leave those things alone. We will go back to normal life and we will deal with all these matters. And look at how the government has responded to health workers' demands over the years. The government has done its best to ensure that every issue that has been brought that is rational, that merits attention, has been given attention. Mm-hmm. So it is my prayer that the health workers will not allow us to go into a strike at a time such as this, where the nation really requires their service. That at a time like this, let them remember that while they have jobs, while we all have jobs, there are people out there who are struggling to get a meal on the table. So it's also a time for us to be understanding and a time for us to really pull cohesively to just see that we make a turn for the better on Corona. So without, much, speaking much for it, I'm hoping that the negotiations that are going to be mediated by Labour are going to turn out well, because this is also a matter that is for the counties, because nurses actually belong to counties. The counties are the implementing agencies for health, because health is a devolved function.
Now,
but the ministry will rise up to the occasion to offer leadership, and we do hope that we will end up amicably and ensure that we don't disrupt the battle or this challenge that is facing our country. Because should we go into a strike, I can assure you a lot of the gains that we have made will be lost. So now, we are going into this with an open mind, and also very clear that we have been finalizing our welfare package together with the Ministry of Public Service, together with the COG, that is the County of Governors. And I am sure that the health workers will be reasonable and understanding as we go into this. But we go with it with a very open mind to hear what the concerns are.
Very well said. Now, we've talked about the issue of complacency among Kenyans. But are you satisfied with what government is doing to ensure that these PPEs, the masks, the sanitizers that are already available to the public meet the required standards?
One thing that I want to assure our fellow Kenyans is that we have the necessary regulatory bodies whose business is to ensure that any products that are provided to the citizenry meet certain standards. We have the Kenya Bureau of Standards. We have the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. They have not relegated their duty even at a time such as this. We have ensured that whatever is provided to the citizenry has been really vetted and properly checked by the relevant bodies. And I think I'm happy that, for example, through KEBS and PBB working together, we've now identified several local manufacturers for PPEs, companies by Kenyans which can develop PPEs that are sometimes of a much superior quality than what we are getting from outside of the country. So I would want to assure Kenyans that those bodies are working, that even if there is pressure under Corona, we will not compromise on standards, but only ensure that what is provided to our citizens and our health workers meets the necessary and required standards. And having said that, I would also want to encourage the entrepreneurs to really get a hold of the standards from KEBS, for example, on how to make a mask, what is expected of a reusable mask, because I see that is where we need to make more of an investment. I see people wearing surgical masks, but the problem with that is that the surgical masks are actually meant in a hospital setup, and they are meant to be used and disposed of as a doctor or a health worker, a nurse, a public health officer is moving from one person to another. So for us, what we need in terms of sustainability are reusable masks. And I'm happy that so far, through the support of various agencies, we've been able to distribute over 1 million masks to the vulnerable members of community. As a ministry, we have asked that we would want to see at least 5 million good quality reusable masks distributed to the most vulnerable, because we are alive to the fact that 50 shilling, that 30 shilling may be way beyond the reach of some of our citizens. So you will see us moving out more aggressively through the national administration arm of government to continue to issue masks, because here at AFIA, we believe that alone is a very, very significant intervention to ensure that we contain the spread of coronavirus. But I urge Kenyans, don't take it lightly. It is not something that people should see as a matter of choice or take lightly. It is not something that the ministry is just saying or government is just saying. It is really an intervention of care. It is like when, we had the scourge of HIV and AIDS, when it became a real issue in this country. Everybody was urged to engage in safe sexual activities. So in the same way now we are telling Kenyans, be safe, wear a mask, do not take it for granted. And Regina, I would want to add that in this time when the cold season has come in, one of the things about corona is that the virus stays in the air more. It doesn't fall quickly to the ground when the weather is what it is. It means that it continues to float in the air. So if that be the case, can you imagine that if you are in a place where there are people, you are at a bus stop, you are at a market, the only way you can stop yourself from picking that virus is just a mask. So I would plead with Kenyans, let us wear masks. And for those of us with know-how, Regina, it's also my prayer that we also decide to be our brother's keepers. Okay. Let us tell people where you can to not take it lightly and not to wear it because you fear that the police will find you without a mask. Let's just wear it because we need it. When it gets cold, you'll see a lot of us wearing sweaters and jackets because we don't want to feel cold. Let us also embrace the mask in that way. Now that there is corona, wear a mask as part of your dressing and your lifestyle.
Very well said. Thank you very much. Now, we need to own the process there. Now, what is your take on the lifting of some of the directives, especially where restaurants are concerned? We're seeing that Kenyans are going now to hotels, and some of them are flouting those particular guidelines, especially where social distancing is concerned. And if I can go back to when CS Kagwe actually was very irate and said, people are going, buying 2 sausages, asking for a whole bottle of whiskey and such. The issue of lifting of some of those directives, especially where restaurants are concerned, is that a point of concern for the Ministry of Health?
It really, it's a real concern because when that intervention was made, allowing for a sector of the economy to open up, it was done because of recognizing the economic pressure that Kenyans are facing and the recognition that a good number of our people are also in the, hotel, restaurant business. So it was done as a way of just ensuring that people can sustain their livelihoods. But my call to people would be, if we do not observe those protocols, if we do not observe the distancing, the hygiene, ensuring that there is water outside the restaurant before people walk in, ensuring that all the health workers are properly masked. What will happen is, in the event that we do our usual continuous research and discover that indeed these measures are not being followed and the spread is being excavated, then, it may force the clawbacks to be done. It may force that in the interest of public health, we go back to closing those restaurants. So I think let us be sensitive as Kenyans, as the government tries to be sensitive and open certain sectors of the economy. Please let us do so within the stipulated guidelines, because if not, this enemy of ours called corona will make us to go back and shut down. You have seen what has happened in other countries. The governments make a decision to try and open the economy, and then after a short while they are forced to close down again because the numbers begin to spike. But what we know for sure is that if people are to adhere to every guideline, even you as a person walking into a restaurant, making sure that you maintain the safety, the right distance, making sure that you clean your hands, and for the restaurant, making sure that that table is disinfected after every user has left. We will see ourselves going back to those days when those restaurants will not have been opened. But we also have to pull together to responsibly open up economic activity because again, how long can we continue to be in this difficult situation? So mine would be to really plead, don't allow us to go back. Don't allow for the clawback to come. Please let us be progressive by ensuring that we uphold the guideline. I know some people are feeling they'll get less customers. Some people are feeling like it doesn't matter. But if you're careless, we may just see this disease continuing to stay with us longer. Mm-hmm. So it's really my prayer that we take these matters very seriously, and the restaurant owners should really be proper gatekeepers, making sure that there is proper adherence and observance on matters hygiene within their restaurants.
Now, we are doing a spot check of what is happening at the Central Business District this morning. Clips that we are seeing here indicate that the numbers, we are almost as business as usual. Then in the course of the week, the government has given a directive to have those not wearing their mask properly arrested. That is, if you're exposing your nose, or you're exposing your nose but covering your mouth, or not just properly using the masks. With these numbers that we are seeing on our streets, that we are seeing currently, Kenyans are going about their business as usual. What is your feel from the Ministry of Health right now? Do you think this is a weak link in the stemming the spread of COVID-19, or do we need to better adhere to the guidelines?
I can tell you without any doubt that if we don't adhere, and when we see people continuing to go around their business without masks, it worries us a great deal, because it tells us that we are far from winning this fight. So for me, I congratulate the citizens who have understood that it is their personal responsibility to protect themselves and to protect their families. But for those that are taking it for granted, I think they need to understand they are the ones who will be holding this country back. They are the ones who will be perpetuating the spread of the disease. And they are the ones who will keep us continuing to be in this situation where the economy is almost closed and where things are not moving. So every time somebody finds themselves not wearing a mask, they should know that they are personally responsible for holding back the progressive gains that we want to make, and they should know they are also personally responsible for keeping us under these restrictions, under these lockdowns. So I would urge every Kenyan, please wear the masks. The lack of wearing masks is very, very concerning. And for as long as we continue taking it for granted, as I said, we are not anywhere near going back to normalcy. But let me also congratulate those people, those Kenyans who are standing up and fighting the virus because they are washing hands, because they are wearing masks, because they are avoiding being in crowds. I want to congratulate those ones, because those are the true warriors they're the true warriors against the fight of corona. But anybody who does not, please know you are not only letting yourself down, you're letting down your fellow Kenyans, and you're letting down your own families. This corona is about each and every individual's behavior and responsibility. Please wear masks. It is not an option. It is a mandatory requirement in the fight. The minute you wear that mask, just know you have become a shujaa. Just know you have become a mzalendo. Just know that you have joined with the rest of the Kenyans to put an end to this disease. But when you don't do it, you are the betrayer of our country.
Mm-hmm. Now, how far are we in getting a local solution, a vaccine? What has Kenya, or what is Kenya doing to support the research of finding a cure, or better yet, a vaccine?
What I can tell you, Regina, for a fact, there is no researcher right now who is having a peaceful time, especially the virologist. Our scientists in Cambridge, our scientists at the University of Nairobi, they have already begun to do their own tests. They are picking samples and testing and finding out what is this virus? How does it manifest in our bodies? And, because until you understand the virus, you cannot even begin to think of the cure. And of course, they are collaborating with other researchers across the world. And you, as you very well know, this is really a struggle of the world, the entire world, to find a solution that will keep these menace away from us. But as you know, even countries that have matured, countries that have, have industrial scale production of vaccines and with huge investments, they are all racing and trying to find a solution. And our scientists are not left behind. And in fact, because I interact with them all the time, I get impressed by what we have as Kenya. We have got talented, we have got top-notch scientists and researchers who are not sleeping, but who are working hard to see if we can find a solution that will really be able to offer us relief from this virus. And we are offering every support as a ministry and as a government, because who knows, we may just be the ones who will make the breakthrough. You never know, but we are not leaving anything to chance. Okay. When we hear other countries talking about possible, interventions that work, the herbal medicines in Madagascar, the recent medication that the U.S. talked about, we also take an interest, and we also carry on our research on all those to just confirm their efficacy. Do they work? Are they risky to the body? What is going on? So right now, as we speak, there is nothing that has been left to chance. Every possible cure, whether traditional, whether conventional, is being explored by our own scientists in the various research institutions.
Now, as we come to a conclusion, there's been a lot of debate, especially on social media circles, as to when or the proper time that we should reopen our schools. We have KCP candidates, we have KCSE candidates. Everyone is anxious about the reopening of schools. From where you sit, from a medical, when likely should we have the reopen or rather resumption of school? Is June too soon or too far?
I think, Regina, where we have reached, we don't look at the months, we don't look at the dates. What is going to be the key determinant on where the country is going in terms of easing restriction is going to be the number of cases reported. I think it will be responsible for us to begin to open the economy further if the numbers are on the rise. So this is why it is so important for us to do that simple, basic intervention, which has worked in other parts of the country. Washing hands, wearing masks, social distance. If we see a reduction in the cases of corona, absolutely no reason why the economy should remain closed. But if the numbers continue to rise, any responsible leader, any responsible person will want to maintain stronger restrictions to bring to break the chain. So a lot of it will depend on how we behave and how quickly the numbers can begin to go down. That is what will really give us an assurance to have life go back to normal. And again, all that depends on each and every one of us. I think if we saw everyone wearing masks and everybody trying to just, avoid unnecessary movements, evidence has already shown us that when that is done, you start to see the curve going down. When those restrictions are adhered to, not just in Kenya, although even here, our researchers have confirmed what we did has already started to cause the decline. We are not as bad as where we expected to be. So it just means we do our best as citizens, we each take personal responsibility, and we'll soon have our economy back on its feet and life going back as normal. But imagine if tomorrow we continue reporting 100, 200 cases and people are not taking the issue seriously. They are still congregated, without social distancing. They are still walking without masks. It just means we'll continue to be in this situation. So it is difficult to talk about dates until we have dealt with the issue of behavioral change amongst our citizens.
Very well said. Ease of measures dependent on the infection cover. Thank you, Madam P.S. Susan Mochache, for making time to be with us. Now there, you've just had a recap of that. That has been my guest this morning, just saying that you and I have a total responsibility in as far as dealing with issues of COVID-19 are concerned, that we need not to be complacent, and that the government is going to ease these measures if you and I comply. This raising concerns there from the Ministry of Health there is that they're concerned about the current deaths recorded at home, and at the same time Kenyans are going about business as usual, yet it is a time business that is unusual. We'd also want to thank our viewers this morning who have been following this particular discussion online. We have Nancy Karetha watching from Ole Kasasi. We have Kennedy Otieno also on Facebook watching from Eldoret. We have Vijez Vivetti and Biz Shivai, who have said that we need, and if I can quote what Shivatai has said, is that we need to follow the laid down guidelines just as WHO advised us. We have been live on KBC Channel 1 TV, streaming live as well as on YouTube. Thank you very much for your feedback. But now, before we close, Ram, I don't know what you have to say in regard to especially the behavior that we're seeing among Kenyans when it comes to COVID-19. You've seen a sports check there by a reporter there, just telling, or rather showing, that Kenyans are going about their normal businesses. What do you have to say, Ram?
Well, I think we should, obedience is better than sacrifice, as the Bible says. When we listen to what the government is saying, what the ministry is saying, I think it will take us to the next level in terms of making sure that we cushion the effects of the coronavirus, and we are able to, flatten the curve. Yeah, but now, Regina, let me just remind us again. Today, the WHO will kick off its first ever virtual assembly. Now, this assembly is one that normally takes 3 weeks, but they will do it today and tomorrow. One of the issues that they will be focusing on, that will be discussed among many others, is this COVID-19. So we're looking forward to getting sustainable solutions moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what I choose to remain optimistic there, given that Eritrea has joined the ranks with Mauritius as a third country to actually eradicate COVID-19. Mm-hmm. What they're doing, Mauritius and Eritrea, there is something that we can emulate, not just as Kenya, but also within the East African region. However, I am concerned about how other countries within the East African community are handling COVID-19, and especially in our neighbor Tanzania there, and with his proclamations, that is proclamations by the head of state, that is John Pombe Magufuli, claiming that, some bit of lemon juice and such can actually cure COVID-19. Well, I may not be, it might be subject to an issue of diplomacy if I was to make that comment, but if indeed that were true, wouldn't everyone be having a coffee of some lemon at some point? But hey. But
people, I'm sure people have come up with all these, drinks, coffee, lemon tea, to just be able to keep the cold away.
But actually, the true statement quoted from President Magufuli in his address yesterday while in church is that prayers, lemon juice can cure COVID, says Magufuli. He says his son actually prayed and was healed, and also took the lemon juice and was healed, and he could now do press-ups.
But I think in Africa it's a different thing, because in Africa we have different beliefs. But remember, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank has said that in Africa we need an additional of $44 billion, and we are talking about 4.6 trillion Kenyan shillings. That is what we need in Africa to curb this and to fight the coronavirus. Well, it's quite sad, but in Africa, I think we need to take different measures, taking it seriously, even as we look into making sure that things go back to normalcy.
Now, just to conclude, I've been your host, Regina Manyara Gitao. Let us meet at the same time tomorrow for Good Morning Kenya. I do wish you a great day ahead. Remember, stay safe. The virus does not move itself. We move it, but we can do this.
And on my end, I would like to bring this to a close also. But as always, a quote. And this morning I would like to quote the CS Mutai Kagwe, who says, if we continue to behave normally, this disease will treat us abnormally. My name is Ram Maguko. May God bless you, and may God bless the work of your hands.